30 years ago, when the majority of South Africans first voted, you think back to the fact that at that point, in the previous election, the last election of the apartheid regime, they had about 3.1 million people registered to vote, of whom 2.1 million voted.
Amazing.
And then in the next election in 1994, it's such an interesting story thinking back of what happened, because there was no voters' roll, and suddenly you had these 16 million people who had never voted before, who needed to be accommodated. And it was just a very, very interesting setup.
So the story of a turnout is always the interesting story. I mean, you speak about 94, and if we want to put a percentage to it, I mean, I think there was almost an 87% turnout of registered voters in 1994. It's huge. It's never ever been that way again. But we moved to the last national election, the lowest we've ever had. Let's talk a little bit about that. Where are we on the expectations for turnout? Because that is a big turning point in these elections.
Yeah, so in 2019 we had 66% turnout, which was the lowest since we started keeping a voters' roll in 1999. And there's been a lot of expectation, a lot of questions about what the turnout will be for this year, because we know that the election result will really hinge on turnout. And it seems we seem like we've got some good signs around turnout. The international vote in 2019, it was 68%. This year, there were 56,800 votes cast internationally. That's 73%. Was the international vote.
Big.
And even yesterday with the special votes, the IEC said it's the highest number of special votes they've ever had cast. And with the queues that we've seen this morning, I think there are good signs that we're possibly going to have a higher turnout than we did in 2019.
Well, we can only hope so, because with a higher turnout, and if we look, it's so nice to have you, Levy, with us here on the program, our political analyst that'll be talking to us as well. Who does it favor more when we look at turnout? I mean, if we have to talk to, I know that's a tough question, and it's not the easiest thing to analyze, but with a very high turnout, who does it work better for?
Well, I think if you look at the 2016 local government elections and the 2009 elections, the ANC would be worried that they did not perform well because some of their traditional voters did not participate in the vote. They did not decide to vote for other parties, but they appear to have decided not to go and vote because of certain things that could have been happening within the party. So what we're not very sure of is as to whether, if these people are brought back to vote, are they still going to be voting for the ANC or not? But I think most people appears to be convinced that these people do not have any other party to vote for than the ANC. That will be what the ANC believes in. But there are different voter patterns at times, that because of the emergence of many other political parties, some people might therefore get tempted to move with new parties, or they can still stay with their parties. But the increment of the number of political parties opens up a huge choice to choose from. But the biggest question would be as to whether these new parties are going to be able to attract people that were the traditional voters of the ANC. But the election machinery and the campaigns for 2024 appear to have been very much intense as compared to the other elections, especially when you look at specifically the ANC and the EFF. The other political parties, smaller political parties' campaigns were not as visible as I expected. But because there were too many activities that were going on, you wouldn't be able to capture all the activities that were happening, because every day there would be a political party activity happening. So you would therefore have to miss some of the activities.
So this proliferation of, entrance onto the landscape, the political landscape, and onto the ballot, Is that a good or a bad thing, Dr. Mbete? Because, does it actually enrich our democracy, or does it just provide, greater fracturing? Or is it good or bad?
Well, I think that the proliferation of parties is part of the design of our electoral system. A closed list proportional representation system is designed to provide choice, to allow as many, as many entrants into the political, into the electoral landscape to represent as greater diversity of the population as possible on a proportional level. And our system is particularly interesting because there's so few barriers to entry. It's quite easy to start a political party in South Africa. In this election, we actually had the greatest barriers to entering into participating in the election because of the signature requirement and because the deposit that parties had to pay was slightly higher this year than it's been in previous years. So it was a little bit actually more difficult to get onto the ballot paper this year than it's been in previous years, which is why we've got a slight decrease. There's 74 parties that are contesting nationally and provincially this year. In 2019 there were 78. So it's a little bit of a decrease. But I think that it's a function of the way that our system is designed. And I think it's a response to our past, where there were so many restrictions on who could be involved in politics and who could participate in the electoral system, that our constitution has allowed for as wide a range of people to
Which
participate.
is a great constitutional ideal,
Yes.
but is it a good or a bad thing for our democracy? For me, that's the question. And also, is the threshold to entry too low? Are these questions that we should be grappling with as a nation? Because if we look at, the ballot paper, so you have how many parties on the national ballot? 52 on the national ballot. And I don't know, is that taking us anywhere, Dr. Ndou?
We are a democracy that is growing. And there are some who are saying we appear to be maturing as our democracy. And whether you like it or not, there are still a lot of people who are very much excited about this democracy. They want to participate, they want to get involved. And our own design allows everybody who has got an interest to participate. What we need to do from now is to draw lessons out of all this. To say, even though we talk about representation, we talk about the rights to participate, we need to look as how good is it for us and how bad is it for us. What therefore would be the right way of having an electoral system? Do we need few parties, or do we need so many parties? Because maybe we should also have a system in which we develop a threshold to say, even though it's easy to form a political party and have followers, maybe we should develop new systems to have some restrictions. 52 for me remains a big number of contestants, and it has its own logistical challenges.
And then let's be real about it, because at the end of the day, I mean, you hear two schools of thought. It's a great developing democracy, but it's also a good business opportunity. Get into politics. And that is very much so what a lot of people are saying. And then at the end of the day, what happens is that you have these smaller parties that do get a few votes, and they may get a bit of a percentage, and then the big guys come in and promise the world, and then there's all these coalitions, and then that just increases the percentage that they need to have that absolute majority, and then it's coalitions, and then it's fighting, and then there's a mayor today, gone tomorrow, here we are, and now we're going to see this on a national level as well, if in fact there isn't an outright winner. So as much as it's a developing and a maturing democracy, is this not complicating it? I mean, does this really work?
I think that these are the questions that are going to need to be asked, actually, as we go through an electoral system reform process after the election. There's this new committee that's been set in place, and these are the questions around the values that we still want to hold on to for our democracy. What's working? Is our electoral system still fit for purpose? Those are the questions to ask after that. and to ask of the system then, and to really say, has it worked, hasn't it worked, what do we want to be changed of it? Because the system we have now is working as it was designed to work, but it may not be the system that we want to take us into the future. And I think that's the question that we need to be asking around, is this going to take us where we want to get to as we go to the future?
Absolutely, because was it intended to be a permanent system, at its inception? You remember the Van Zyl-Slabbert report. So electoral reform is going to be a huge issue that I think we'll be dealing with post this election. But Dr. Ndou and Dr. Mbete, just to look there at some of the lines that are forming, and it's still early. And we are just about an hour into the voting, and it seems people are excited. This is, of course, pictures from across the country where our reporters are.
Very much so, and look at the smiles on the faces, and people waking up nice and early to ensure that they get a place in the queue. And we've got reporters stationed at most of the stations. We really do. Obviously, we can't cover every single one of them, but we have covered every single province, and we are mobile and ready to go with our reporters and cross to them. In fact, after 8 o'clock, we'll be getting as many of the updates as we possibly can from our reporters that are on the scene. So it's great, and it's nice to see everybody looking so comfortable and happy. I suppose everyone's comfortable and happy because things look like they're running smoothly.
Indeed,
so
but I would imagine there are a few hiccups that we'll find out about as the day progresses. And just on voter turnout, as we wrap this, Dr. Mbete, Dr. Ndou, so we look at the 66% turnout in the 2019 general election, and spoiled votes, 1.33%. If spoiled votes was a party, it would have been the 6th biggest party in the country. So, so
that's a thing.
But
that's
it's
one way
still
of
a
looking
very
at it.
small number of spoilt votes.
Yes.
In other countries, you will get far higher percentages of spoilt votes. And it was interesting in South Africa that even in 1994, we had fewer than 2% spoilt votes, which is quite extraordinary considering that for the majority of people, it was their first election. I wanted to say something a little bit silly and funny. It's interesting to see so many men on the TV. The IEC stats of when people vote. Women vote in the morning, between 7 and 11 o'clock in the morning, and men tend to vote later on in the day, having been taken advantage of their public holiday. They tend to vote in the evening.
We can put Levy on the spotlight here. Levy, are you going?
So many men
Are you going in the morning?
Well, I go at any time.
See, there you go. There you go.
But I think it
is interesting to see.
Most would love to relax and encourage family members to go and vote, and then they actually have to go last.
Do we know, sorry, as we wrap up this conversation, because I know we're going into 8 o'clock, those spoiled votes, do we know that, are they disgruntled voters, or is it mostly a mistake? Do we ever get an understanding of what a spoiled vote? We never know.
We don't know. They're just all lumped in the same pile as spoiled votes, so we don't know what the spoiling was.
An important note as well as you go out to vote is that if you do make a mistake on the ballot paper, if by mistake you scribble or you change your mind or whatever the case may be, you are allowed to get another paper. You are. It is a part of the rules. So don't think that, oh my goodness, now I've messed up. It'll be destroyed and you can ask for another one. That's an important point.
That is so important.
Very
ask
important
for
point.
another one.
Yeah.
Before you put it in the box.
Don't put it in the box and ask for another one. It's not going to happen.
And people have the right to change their mind. If you do change your mind, ask for another one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Before you put it in the box.
Good piece of advice. Very good. Thanks so much to our guest.